Hello everyone, this is Spectre18 and welcome to New Waylie, my first attempt at detailing a futuristic city. I don't like long intros, and I will be putting timestamps in the description should you want to jump to certain parts of the video, but a little intro would make sense. New Waylie is my second city of City Skylines, and I want this one to be a futuristic city, and the detailing is pretty much necessary for the image I have in my mind. I can't say much for my specific plans on the build, because most of my art tends to be quite improvisational. Definitely planning for ecumenopolis-like things. Areas where you can't really see the ground because you have all these skyscrapers just built up from there. Crazy roads, but also things for hover vehicles. There's just going to be a mix of technologies in here. There's going to be a lot of things that are elevated, sunken, stacked, things like that. So we're definitely going to be using quite a few mods, procedural objects, and other special assets to really make this happen. So without further ado, let's get to the beginning of the build. So here we are with my official stream launch, at which point I had already built a little bit, such as the train station and the roads in front of it, and one of the vehicle elevators. You see two here because I had made the copy at the end of the previous stream, which is why I was placing it right there. And here I'm also explaining to my viewers how I'm going to be using these tunnel roads even at elevation. Something that you'll be seeing a little bit more of later, and I'll start explaining when we get there. But first, related to that, I'm building this road into the elevator, so for those coming from what is the right side right now, have a way into the elevator. And I wanted it to kind of be covered, not for any particular reason other than aesthetics, so I'm using I think it's called a shed road. It actually uses that shed piece, that concrete shed thing that you see there. You see four of them right now. It's a prop, that gets drawn on the road, which means, of course, I have to keep it level. So that's what I'm working on right now, trying to find the best position for this road to get that level and just make it look good. Now, obviously, the shed is kind of sticking out into the road a little bit, but I'll work with that later. Right now I'm just trying to get the road to actually look good, get the elevations right, the curves right. But this kind of has a sense of a city gate. I don't know if it'll stay that way since we're right at the center of the city, but at least for now it kind of has, those vehicle elevators kind of have that role. So I definitely want to make sure that there are ways in and out of the elevators for all directions, and that's what I'm doing with these roads here. Now I realized that the shed road just straight out of the elevator didn't seem to look good, so I wanted to add this tunnel piece. Hope I'm not wrong. I think it's Ronix. I think Ronix made this for like trains and stuff, train tunnels. But I had to use procedural objects here to stretch it down a little bit more, but it still has that curve on top that is obviously going to go past the shed piece. And here I am fixing the front of the entrance already. But I'm not sure if I added an extra node with electrics thingy there. But whatever, I managed to push the shed back a little bit so it doesn't intersect with the road anymore. So because of that extra space on top we have, I realized that maybe I should just add something extra, and I thought about a pedestrian path. That would be cool. Kind of weird, but that's fine. I'm trying to do things kind of a little weird and different. So I had this idea of a pedestrian path over the highway. Well, in this case, it's the on-ramp. But, yeah, over the highway in general. But as I did this, somehow I got the crazy idea of extending that right like this onto the mountain. So just kind of make this just a fun, maybe touristy kind of hike up the mountain. And I'm using, I think you can see it there and find it. I believe this is called Pedestrian Path with stairs or something like that. And what it actually does, which you'll see from a close-up hopefully soon, is it actually uses the vanilla bench prop to make the stairs. And it's actually a pretty good idea. Like, it looks pretty good. You have to zoom in really, really far, really, really close to be able to tell that they're benches. But, you know, if you just don't think about it much, if you weren't told, you could definitely get that they're stairs. See? Like, that looks pretty good there. Now, since this is elevated, this isn't messing with the terrain at all, so I kind of wanted to make sure it follows the curves, or yeah, I guess curves is the right word, of the side of the mountain. So that's why I was doing a lot of editing there. There we go. So there you can see those are benches. Pillar was sticking out a little bit, so I had to bring those down a little bit, and then that was the end. Now I'm extending the path out into the highway. And this highway is, you know, part of the map. So because there's this gap between the two directions of the highway, I'm like, that's a perfect place to put the pedestrian path. So it's going to be elevated and just go over the highway. And I figured might as well extend this down to, obviously to the end of the exposed highway. But at the same time, when I'm going so far out the area that I'm working on, I figure I should have some idea where it's going to go, some sense of what's going to happen. So the end over there, where it went off to like the top of a ridge, I figure it's going to be either like a elevated park, outlook, maybe in a little neighborhood or something. Because again, I think this would be a tourist attraction. Not to say this is the nicest thing, right? But you know how certain paths or roads can be tourist attractions. So something that makes it into the city guidebooks and things like that. Now this part was a little tricky though, because, you know, I have a curve, and when you have a curve like this, obviously that means that the road past the node is also curved. So that part had to stick out toward one of the roads a little bit, while I'm trying to have all the nodes after that be perfectly centered between the roads. But it worked out. I managed to get something pretty good. Now I'm back to the vehicle elevators to try to get the other entrance in. I really wanted something that was right on the edge of this mountain, this little plateau on the mountain. So I really wanted to kind of like dig down a little bit into that edge, and this is pretty much what I wanted. That's what I want to see. So just kind of like cut down a little bit into the mountain, and there I am using the tunnel piece again. So it's really nice that with Road Anarchy you can do this without having to, you know, sink the road elevation down so much. Now here's the tricky part, and I'm going to leave almost the whole process here so you can see just how problematic this can be, although it's also part of my inexperience. But now the thing is, that road has to come really high. That's what you see there. That segment is actually a really long segment from the bottom to nearly the top of that vehicle elevator. So that's, you know, just like the pedestrian elevators, it really is just a really super steep road that's hidden from view by the building piece. And so because the building is covering it up, it's sometimes really hard to work with. You really have to go by the road and node outlines you see here, you know, all the green and blue outlines, to try to get things to connect correctly. So apparently I hadn't made a connection yet there. I'm not too sure. But then right around here I realized that, you know, it doesn't have to come up the whole way. I can always just change the elevation. So might as well instead connect it to the other side right now, like this. And then now that the two sides are connected, I can just go in there and, you know, I can follow the segment with move it by highlighting over it and more easily find the node and bring it up to where it needs to be, which is what happens here. Now somehow I accidentally move up that second vehicle elevator, which I'm not sure if I realized here. I probably didn't realize that it ruined that little boxy thing on the top of it. You can see it here on the left one. It's no longer on the right one because it's sunken. Somehow it came down. So I'll get back to that. But for the crossing, I decided I wanted this to kind of be a covered crossing, kind of like a tunnel. So I'm using the shed road again, which causes this clipping on the bottom because I think it only works in ground mode. So that's why we see all the blue here for the clipping. And now I'm using terraforming roads to either flatten or just kind of even out the terrain around these roads here, just so that it kind of makes sense, kind of follows the reasonable contour of this area. Yeah, I think you could see there for a little bit that there was some terrain that had pulled up and it kind of bled through the sides of the building. So I need the terraforming network to make sure that terrain gets cut exactly at the edge of the building. Now that that was done, because that crossing up there has to be two-way for an exit, now I had to add the other road outwards, exit, whatever. Again, a little tricky. Had to try a few things, whether I go from outside in or inside out, but I got to work. But you see that they glitch out when you try to make some edits, and I think sometimes even when you just reload the game. And I was kind of getting frustrated about it, but then I realized that all you have to do is what I'm doing right now is, I think I did that intentionally even just to prove it. All I have to do is change the direction of the one-way, and it resets the tunnel piece. And there it is. I finally noticed what happened there, and I bring it back up. No big issue. And taking a look at everything, because everything's pretty much done, but then I realized that I just moved that piece. It was on the wrong side. So it's something that I wanted to have jutting out toward the crossing. And now I copied that big piece to see if it looked okay, maybe shrink it, just something. I just wanted something a little thicker under the crossing. Is crossing the right word here? I don't really mean that. The bridge, I guess. It's not really a walkway, is it? Now it's a driveway. But then driveway means something else. But then I decide not to, or I'll probably just do something else later. So I just got to totally abandon the idea right now and instead fix the little connection point of the bridge to the elevator. And then here's a final look of the city from a nice interesting angle before we go on to the second stream. So thanks for watching, and wherever you may be, good morning, good afternoon, and good night.